William.
Thank you.
You know, based on that report by Chris Thairu and what's making headlines on the dailies this morning, what do you make of this big announcement by the opposition, so to speak?
Yes, certainly so. I think we have said it here previously, that Honorable Raila Odinga, being the statesperson that he has been, whatever action plan that he was going to contemplate was going to be within the legal and constitutional provisions that are there in the current constitution. Talking of the People's Assembly, as it were, talking of proposals to reform the electoral system, to reform the structure of government, all those are issues which are provided for in Article 257 of the Constitution. So essentially what we have here is an amendment of the Constitution through a popular initiative, Okoa Kenya, as it were, but coming up under a different name, I presuppose.
All right.
Yes.
And of course, the calls for civil disobedience have been making headlines since, you know, last week when he announced it. And he says the resistance wing of NASA will be announcing dates as to when they will start protests and will start implementing this civil boycott. But that involves, you know, things that are very pertinent to the common mananchi. If he says we're going to boycott goods that benefit the Jubilee government, so to speak, wouldn't an economic boycott hurt the very people that Raila Odinga is trying to protect?
Well, by practice, an economic boycott, depending on the scale and the effectiveness, may hurt certain sections of the economy. But as it were, in the legal philosophy, they are relying on Article 1.2. The basis of taking this program of action is that the sovereign power belongs to the people, and it shall be exercised either directly or indirectly. So what they're counting on is an exercise of this sovereign power through direct means. When you look at the Constitution, the few instances where sovereign power may be exercised directly are provided for in the Constitution. One, it's by public participation of the people in decision-making through public consultations. Two is in the formation of associations, formation of political parties, voting, referenda. So you find that in this instance, they want to exercise that sovereign power through the rights which is in Article 41. That is the freedom to picket, freedom to present public petitions to the institutions. But in his words, I think it has to be peaceful, it has to be unharmed. And that is the point there.
Okay, and maybe looking at it from a political angle, Kenyans waited with bated breath for the big announcement. Do you think it was that big? Did it deliver as far as you're concerned? There are those who say that basically it was a repeat of everything that we had had before.
Well, for those who have a strict adherence to the rule of law, to respect to democratic institutions, it was big. But for those who may probably have thought that the opposition outfit could go out of the constitutional means, it certainly was a disappointment. Because it was unforeseeable for Honorable Raila to announce a course of action which will go against the Constitution. That will have been a betrayal of what he had stood for all these years.
All right, and of course, there's this six-point plan on the front page of the Standard newspaper here that Raila Odinga outlined yesterday, pointed to yesterday. And the first, of course, is the launch of a national resistance movement and campaign. It says it will be the formation of a People's Assembly, which will be in existence until a legitimate president is elected. But the second one is the setting up of a council to coordinate the resistance strategies. But important is number 3. Readiness for dialogue with Uhuru to resolve the poll impasse. But the bigger question has been, what do they talk about now? Because Uhuru Kenyatta had expressed willingness to meet Raila Odinga after the elections. We've seen the elections being held, and we're seeing him now postpone that, saying I will meet him after the inauguration has happened and all the legal processes have been followed. It's still not clear what legal process will follow in the course of the next 14 days. But does it signal hope to perhaps building a bridge within the division in the country?
Certainly so. Honorable Raila Odinga and the NASA coalition, they've always been ready for dialogue. In all the instances where the IBC called for stakeholder engagement, Honorable Raila Odinga has been on record as having attended all those meetings. But counting on the words of the Deputy President recently in an interview by Al Jazeera, he was very categorical that they are ready to engage the opposition in discussion of issues of national importance to the exclusion of another election. And certainly also the president, in his acceptance speech, victory speech yesterday, he was categorical that let the constitutional processes take place. If a challenge is going to happen to the declaration of him as the president-elect, let that one be dealt with by the Supreme Court, and thereafter, if he emerges successful, then he will be ready to engage the nation, to engage the opposition, only on issues of national reconciliation and unity. So I think that one point of negotiations on the electoral impasse is a major point of divergence. Jubilee may not want to entertain thoughts of another elections right now.
But now the question would be, with Raila Odinga and the NASA faction having said they will not recognize the government or recognize Uhuru Kenyatta as president, what negotiations can they have? Because really, here you have one who says that you're not the president, and yet he sees himself as the president and the leader of government. So can there really be dialogue when you think about it?
Well, the declaration by NASA that they will not recognize the election of President Uhuru Kenyatta, I'll say that that is a political statement. Because one, Mr. Kenyatta was declared president-elect by the IEBC, which is an institution set up in the constitution to carry elections and thereafter to declare a winner, as Mr. Chebukati did. And thereafter, that declaration was gazetted, which is a legal mechanism of identifying an election winner. And thereafter, if the president is successful in defending that declaration in the Supreme Court, then by all means and purposes is going to be sworn in as a president of the Republic. So saying that they are ready for engagement with Jubilee in more or less means that tacitly they will have acknowledged and accepted that for all practical purposes, this is the president of the country, de facto, that is.
Let's also keep in mind that the controversial electoral laws really technically became law after the 14-day lapse since they were passed in Parliament.
It was yesterday.
Yeah, yesterday or the day before. So that being said, in the next 14 days, or in the next 7 days, are we likely to see any legal processes, considering what Chief Justice David Maraga says? If you bring an election before me with the same circumstances, I have no problem annulling it again. Are we likely to see another legal process with Raila Odinga petitioning this election?
Definitely so. And I think yesterday I pointed out that our Article 22 of the Constitution allows for what is called public interest litigation. This is a situation whereby even if I, as an aggrieved person, is not able to go to court, I'm not able to go to court under my own name, then any other public-spirited individual can be able to go to court to defend my rights. So I'm predicting a situation whereby some certain voters or group of voters, either aligned to NASA or not necessarily aligned to NASA, will definitely go to court to challenge the outcome of the October 26th presidential election. So definitely, I will place a bet that we are still going to have 1, 2 or more petitions challenging that declaration.
All right, and let's look at other stories that are making headlines now.